All right, Jared, appreciate you being here today.
You're so welcome, Justin.
Yes, I know. I owe you for this. But it means a lot that we're going to talk about the difference of EAB. We're here in the training center. Obviously, the training center is a big part of the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you lead one of our newest service lines, which is there's a big difference there. And we're going to get to that and talk about it, right?
Sure.
So what I want you to do today is tell the folks that would be listening to this a little bit about you. Let them get to know Jared a little bit.
So I grew up in South Florida, so love the beach, everything to do with it. Moved to Texas in high school. Started my working career in the military. Did a few tours overseas, and after my final tour, I decided that I wanted to get into the civilian workforce. So honestly, EAB was one of the first jobs that I ever had. Came and joined the team in 2008.
I remember you were young.
I was young. I was 21 years old.
Yep.
I mean, I enjoyed it from the start. You interviewed Jimmy Polizzo earlier today, and I really came up under his tutelage.
Sure.
I was his partner for a very long time.
Well, let's talk about how you got from that point when you were pretty young, just kind of starting your career. I think it's valuable. Let's talk about going into law enforcement, coming back.
Sure. So one of the biggest things in law enforcement, there's a lot of reporting, right? Mm-hmm. And there's also a lot of attention to detail, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to witness an entire scene and then come back to your car, an hour, 3 hours later, and try and put that all on paper and make a defensible case.
Sure.
And you have to be so familiar with the law, right? You have to know the traffic code. You have to know the penal code. So it doesn't seem like it would translate, but it really does, right? Especially for critical environment. Because a lot of what we do is based on specific standards and procedures, and things have to be done to the letter of the law.
And you're taking a snapshot just like you would with a scene,
mm-hmm.
And you're taking a snapshot of when you were there testing, right? But you've got to describe the whole thing.
Yep.
No, that's a great analogy.
Yeah. So I mean, the skill set there, definitely it translated over here, and it made getting into this because. Critical environment is very technical, right? Yeah. There's very specific things that have to be done. Those standards have to be met, and we're making sure that they're met.
Yep. So let's talk about you were here at EAB for a bit, mm-hmm. and then you went into law enforcement for a little while, and then you came back to EAB. And at that point, you were working in our test and balance group.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience there, what you were doing, and how that and kind of build that into where the transition into where you are now.
Sure. So talking about the tab portion before I left law enforcement.
No, when you came back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I came back, well, I guess I need to go back to my foundation, right?
Sure.
So my foundation was primarily in the medical center,
mm-hmm.
and I would say I probably spent 80% of my career at MD Anderson Cancer Center.
Yep.
And MD Anderson is a fantastic client, and they have such a broad spectrum of facilities that you can see everything, right? You can see a radio pharmacy, you can see a vivarium, you can see wet labs. General office spaces, cafeterias, like there's everything there, right? So
I mean,
it's a
huge office buildings, anything. It's what's pretty amazing about that client is.
I mean,
it's very diverse.
Research facilities.
Yep.
So it's a fantastic training ground for test and balance because you see everything.
Yep.
You see a piece of everything.
Yep.
So that was my background. That's what I knew. And in coming back, I fell right back into MD Anderson again. And I helped really develop the program over there of doing their verifications for their most sensitive environments, right? So it was more focused on the test and balance, air change rates, pressures, things like that. But doing those verifications, we were doing everything. We were doing their vivariums, we were doing their operating rooms, their isolation rooms, anything that was kind of a critical environment. Pharmacies, of course, yeah,
Yep.
their sterile compounding pharmacies. We were part of that,
Yep.
right? And we got that down pat, and it was just on repeat over and over, every 6 months. So a lot of exposure to that. And really how that transition came for me from going from tab to CEC came in, I kind of became a fixer, right?
Sure.
So I love troubleshooting. It's one of my favorite things about what we do, right? There's no better feeling than having, well, it's not great for the client to have a problem, but for them to have a problem, for me to come in, analyze it when, maybe other people have tried it. They've looked at it and they haven't been able to find a solution, right? But to find that solution, and when it's implemented, it immediately fixes it. There is no better feeling in the world.
I can appreciate that.
So specifically, I started having to do that a lot with CGMP facilities and with sterile compounding pharmacies. So I was being called into these spaces for problems, finding solutions, getting them back up and running, and then we were handing it off to somebody else to certify it.
Yep.
Well, the bridge there was, why am I handing it off when I can just take it to the finish line?
Sure.
So that was the piece.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was actually driven by our clients as well, right? So we had, clients originally in our Dallas-Fort Worth area that saw the difference, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, in EAB, and they asked us to get into it, right? We stayed away from certification for a very long time.
We did.
And we tried to focus directly on just doing test and balance and building commissioning, but our customers kept asking over and over for us to do these services.
Yeah, so let's stop right there.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to ask you later about the history of
Sure.
CEC at EAB. So let's talk about the difference, though.
Sure.
And we have these different points that we've come up with because over the years, our clients, our team members, folks in the industry that we work with, they all acknowledge that EAB is different. And so we really worked hard to try to say, what do we do differently? And we've come up with some things. And one of those is thought leadership. Okay. And that's a big one because that's really, I feel strongly that one's been ingrained here since I started. And I've been here about 22 years. And obviously the company's been around, we're coming up on a 70-year anniversary. What does thought leadership mean to you?
So it means that we're always trying to be on the forefront of the industry.
Yep.
Right. You said, I've heard you say, if we're not training, we're falling behind. Right?
Absolutely.
The building we're sitting in right now is a good example of that thought leadership. Okay. We're not in the training for the money, right?
Correct. Well, I mean, if we talk about it internally, it's an investment in our people.
Right.
But it is an expense from a business standpoint. Absolutely.
It is. But we've put so much into it that we get so much better quality personnel in the field, right?
Yep.
And it's that mentality of let's have the best trained people we possibly can, and it'll pay off in the end.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And also in thought leadership, it's who we associate with, right? We're part of the committees for AABC, for NSF.
What's AABC?
So the Associated Air Balance Council.
Okay.
So the larger overreaching organization that we're a part of as independent test and balance agency.
Yep.
So we're part of the committees there. And CEC, so our controlled environment certification, has taken off there as well. So honestly, I feel like what we've started at EAB has kind of sparked into our larger industry, and we're seeing growth in other tab agencies.
AABC is starting to embrace some certifications in those areas and make it complementary to their test and balance certification offerings, right?
So other people are seeing the same things we are, the same need, right? But as it seems to always happen, we're kind of on that forefront, sparking that,
Yep.
if you will. Yep.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great. How do you think thought leadership is demonstrated to our clients? And what value does it bring to our clients?
Seeing new problems and seeing new innovation in our fields, right? Good example, USP, right?
And for the purpose of the folk, or for the benefit of the folks listening to this, what is USP?
So USP is the larger organization for pharmaceutical oversight, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're a nonprofit, but they write standards that that things like sterile compounding pharmacies are held to, right?
Yeah, and what are those? The overarching ones that we use quite a few.
So
times.
USP 795 for non-sterile preparations, USP 797 for sterile preparations, USP 800 for non-sterile and sterile hazardous preparations, so things like chemo or viral agents, things like that, and USP 825 for radiopharmacies.
Okay.
So those really apply, and I had to use them a lot at MD Anderson, and there's been a lot of changes to those, big changes that have happened in the last several years. So those changes kind of drove a lot of this innovation as well, because we had to understand it, because we're trying to set these facilities up to attain these standards.
Yeah.
So, part of the thought leadership is that we had to get involved in those things. We have a really good understanding of them, and we've actually helped our clients to understand them as well by giving them presentations, having meetings with them, discussing their facilities, things like that. So the new innovations that come into our fields, whether it be test and balance, whether it be commissioning, whether it be CEC, we incorporate those, we test them out, and we bring those to the client. And help integrate those new changes.
And we bring them to the industry.
We do.
You're about to give a presentation to an industry event, so why don't you tell us about that?
Right. So the TAFM conference is coming up.
Yeah. What's TAFM?
Texas Association of Healthcare Facility Managers.
Yep.
So it's really the people who are running hospitals in Texas.
Yeah. What are you going to be talking about?
So I'm going to be presenting with one of the engineers from MD Anderson, and we're going to be discussing USP, the same chapters that we just talked about. We're not really going to get into 825, the radiopharmacy, but 795, 797, and 800 we're going to cover. And so we're taking that to a larger audience now, but we're going to help them as facility managers understand those requirements so that they can better integrate them.
No, I think it's going to be a great session.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it. So one of the other universal difference points, or one of the other difference points that we have here at EAB, is called practical experience.
Mm-hmm.
What does practical experience mean to you?
And one of the great things about EAB is everybody who's kind of in a leadership position has started at the bottom.
Good point.
Right.
Absolutely.
When I left, and even when I left EAB, I was a project supervisor, and I came back as a technician in training, and I started again from the ground up. Right. So everybody has that same foundation. Right. So as you work in the field in those lower positions, it prepares you so much better for those leadership positions. That's that practical experience.
And I want to touch on that for just a moment.
Yeah.
So if you're a manager at EAB,
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase that question. How is a manager at EAB, a project manager, or a senior manager, you're almost kind of a director level position in other organizations. But we're talking about somebody that's in management. Related to practical experience, how are they different than maybe other organizations?
Being able to directly connect with those that I oversee, right? So my technicians in the field, being able to help them. Troubleshooting is probably the biggest thing.
And it's because you came up from the bottom.
Right. So a problem that might take them 8 hours to figure out, I've seen a dozen times, and I can give them a solution in 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, we quote around over 1,600 years of experience in our organization. And, one of the big differentiators there, you talked about it. Everyone starts at the bottom, then they make their way up. So all of our management structure, they're not just project managers in the sense of maybe the way the rest of the industry looks at it, right? They are the senior technical folks on our team.
Right.
And so in addition to project management functions that they do, they're there to support the teams and teach the teams and grow our field teams technically, right? And so do you think that helps us to better serve our clients?
100%. So it means that the right people get put into the right positions, right? You're never going to make it into management at this company unless you have that technical experience, unless your metal has been tested, if you will.
Sure.
Right? You've been put through the fire, so you're ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and I think it really translates into who we are and how we're perceived as our clients, because the managers build these relationships with clients, right? And to some extent they do business development, and they're always out there taking care of clients' problems. You talked about the problem solving. Mm-hmm. But we wouldn't be able to do that if our management team didn't have that very, very high level of technical expertise, right?
Yep.
I don't think you would be as successful in the endeavors of CEC and leading your team if you didn't have that tremendous foundation that we talked about. How you got to the position you're in now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Before we talk about CEC, because I do want to spend a little bit of time on that. Mm-hmm. First off, I want you to tell me, what do you love about EAB?
Probably, first is the quality of people, right? Our team. I know I can depend on them. I know they're going to have integrity, and they're probably going to do what I would do if I was there. You
Okay.
know what I mean? It's a culture, right?
And that goes to one of our difference points, right? Core values.
100%. So it's our culture here, right? We have the best interest of our employees in mind, right? We're not chasing the dollar here. We're not. That's just a fortunate consequence that comes from our pursuit of
Absolutely.
our projects.
Yep.
Right? If I break even on a job, but I did a great job for the client and they're happy,
it's a win.
It's a win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's that culture, right? I'm not being pushed for profit. I'm being pushed to be excellent at what I do and serve our clients.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit specifically about CEC, Critical Environment Certification Services. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we call it here at EAB. The industry sometimes calls it Controlled Environment Certifications, Pharmacy Certifications, Biological Safety Cabinets, Fume Hoods, Clean Rooms, all those things. When we say CEC here, that's kind of what we mean.
Right.
So let's talk. I mean, we kind of got into it a little bit before, mm-hmm. But let's step back and let's talk about the history of CEC, those certifications here at EAB, and how we were around it, but then how we kind of came to forming the team that you've done a great job of leading.
Sure, I appreciate that. We've always been around these environments and these specific pieces of equipment really since they've been in the industry, right? On the test and balance and commissioning side, it's been our responsibility to get them operating correctly. And like I said, we're taking it all the way to the finish line and then handing it off to a certifier.
Yep.
Right. So we've been around these things for years, right? Since 2008, I've been around biosafety cabinets. I've been around HEPA fan filters. I've been around, pressure sensitive rooms and areas. We've been working in these environments for decades. We just didn't certify. I mean, that was the only difference there. And it all came from our clients who were expressing to us that they were not getting the service that they wanted. And they saw how we delivered our test and balance services and our commissioning services. And honestly, like I said, they recognized too that we were taking it 90% of the way, right, as experts.
Yeah.
And they would come to us and say, well, we want that all the way. Go ahead and please get into certification. So it really came from our clients asking us to, because I know we held off for a very, very long time.
We did. So why don't you, for the benefit of whomever may be listening to this, just kind of talk about how we crossed that bridge. I mean, that's there were a number of years. I mean, even going back when I was doing labs, I was dealing with certifiers, and we even had frustrations sometimes with other certifying professionals because they didn't necessarily understand the system. They just were testing the component, and sometimes they weren't even testing it the right way, and that may have caused contention. I don't really want to go there, though, right?
Right.
What was the defining moment, though, that kind of started CEC at EAB?
Probably 2017, when we started testing these types of equipment for our CGMP clients in the Dallas area.
Yes.
That was the launch. Again, that was customer driven, and then we had to go out and get the knowledge, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it was my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong because you may know more than I do. We had a very large industrial, pharmaceutical type client, right? We'll just leave it at that. And they were not happy with the certifier for their clean room, their manufacturing clean room facilities, right? And they, similar to what you've kind of said before, they begged us.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely begged us because they appreciated the quality of work that we did on the testing and balancing side, and literally begged us to consider just doing filter testing.
Right.
And we finally caved, right? Is that accurate?
That's pretty much the starts, right?
Okay.
And then it snowballed from there. Yeah, and that thought leadership, the next piece for developing CEC was gaining that knowledge, right? We had a lot of practical experience from dealing with these pieces of equipment and setting them up and troubleshooting them for decades, right? So we had a lot of that piece, but it was going and learning the specific standards, the certification requirements, things like that. So we invested heavily in sending our folks to training agencies that had that knowledge base that we could pull from.
Yeah, so let's back up, because in some of our other discussions, we've talked about the Associated Air Balance Council, and what they're doing and how they relate to the industry, and obviously how EAB is a big part of that organization. What are some of the organizations, though, that are really key to CEC?
So the two that we associate with most are CETA, so the Controlled Environment Testing Association.
CETA, right?
CETA, yep. And CETA is essentially the AABC, if you will, of the clean room world.
Yep.
So we've gone and gotten certification through them. They have a great training arm. The Eagleson Institute is primarily who we've gone and used. And they have a lot of great training materials. It's a good partnership, and we enjoy working with them. And the second would probably be NSF, and specifically the folks at NSF that work on NSF 49, which is specific.
I was going to say, no, NSF's a very large organization, but they have this niche oversight of biological safety cabinets.
Right.
Right.
Yep. And they, it's the ANSI standard. It is the industry standard, NSF 49 for biological safety cabinets. And we've partnered with them, and we've actually become an approved testing site here at our training
Yeah,
center.
here in our training center. Yeah.
For NSF 49 practical examinations.
Yep. No, that's great. And in the future, we I think we're going to do a kind of a feature on that.
Sure.
It's going to be pretty neat. Okay, so with those organizations, we went out and gained the knowledge, right? What has it taken to grow CEC from that point where we kind of recognized that we needed to gain some of the industry knowledge, and then translate that into being able to provide the highest quality CEC services to our clients?
So the first was building that foundation, that solid foundation, right? Making sure that we're doing everything the right way, and identifying team members that could come and join.
Sure.
And we pulled from experienced technicians.
So that's one thing that makes us different, right? So let's very briefly let's talk about that.
Yeah. So the individuals that we have dedicated to CEC now have a lot of experience already in these environments. So we pulled from those that were test and balance side, working in sterile compounding pharmacies, working at GMP facilities, working at operating rooms, working at research labs.
Yep.
They already have a great exposure to that. And I guess, pulling from those folks was a great jump start. And then really it was just getting the word out, letting people know, our other customers that we have existing relationships know that we were doing these services. And a lot of them have embraced it whenever they found out that we've done it.
So let's just run through, for the purposes of somebody who may not be as familiar with CEC, some of the core services that we can provide under what we call CEC services.
Sure. So we can do facility certifications, like an FDA facility.
What type of facilities?
CGMP facility, pharmaceutical manufacturing, sterile compounding pharmacies, which there are a lot. Pretty much every major hospital that you see has a sterile compounding pharmacy in it. And then the pieces of equipment that are associated with these clean rooms in these environments, right? So biological safety cabinets, fume hoods for your research labs, HEPA filters. Everything has a HEPA filter in it these days.
Sure.
Right? So those have specific standards that they needed to be tested to make sure that they're performing like they're rated. The clean rooms themselves, we're also taking viable samples. So we sample for air and surface samples for microbial growth, and we send those to a lab that we have a partnership with. Really any kind of piece of equipment.
Decons.
Decontamination of biosafety cabinets, laminar airflow workbenches. Some people call them clean benches. Really, they're all devices used for the protection of those working on products and the product themselves and the environment as well.
No, that's great. That's great. So let's talk about why EAB is different in that space. We talked about how we got there, and so that kind of lends itself to why we're different, right? So can you tell me a little bit about, if someone was going to hire EAB for CEC, why are we different than maybe some of the other certifiers that are out there?
I think one of the things that our clients have enjoyed the most is a lot of times the problems come up in a certification, right? There are failures, things that get identified. And a lot of times they are due to system problems, right?
Yeah, and when you say system...
When I say system, I mean everything above the ceiling and beyond the ceiling, right? It could be the air handler. It could be the
ventilation systems.
The ventilation systems. And a lot of certifying agencies have to stop there. They have to stop at the ceiling, right? And they have to say...
And why is that?
They don't have that knowledge of the total system like we do, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is that we understand total systems. I know how your exhaust fan operates. I know how your air handler operates. I know how the terminal units that deliver that airflow into the room operate, the Phoenix valves, all those key components and parts we've seen 1,000 times. We've addressed issues with them, and we fix them, right? It goes back to what I said earlier, like that troubleshooting, that coming in and being a fixer. Well, instead of telling the customer, okay, you have these failures. Call me back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever you get it fixed, and I'll come back and tell you if I can certify it. And that might happen 2, 3, 4 times. And sometimes there's a disconnect there between what the certifier's seeing, what they need to pass the certification, and what's being done to fix it. So there can be a lot of back and forth, a lot of, multiple trips, things like that, wasted time and energy. Whereas within the limitations of the existing equipment, if there is a way to fix it, we will find a way.
We can fix it right there.
And we can fix it right
because we
there.
have the knowledge to do that, right?
Right.
Okay. No, that's great. That's
Yep.
great. So specifically with respect to CEC, can you tell me, I know we've been very, very fortunate since we've kicked this off, and it's only been really going at the pace that it's going right now for a little over a year. Let's call it a year and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that fairly accurate? Can you give me some stories, maybe one or two, of why clients who may have been using someone else decided to move over and use EAB for their CEC, to provide CEC services? We talked about the tab aspect, but
Mm-hmm.
what I really want to talk about, in a positive light, is why we're different than some of those other folks and how we take care of the clients.
It really comes down to what I said before, that knowledge of the total system, right?
Yep.
A lot of clients that we've been successful with, it's because we came in and provided solutions.
Yep.
Right? And then we just combined those services. So they saw that value added. And I think the other thing is when one of our clients has a problem, we have a problem.
Yep.
Right? If I have to work in the middle of the night, if I have to come out at 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning, a Sunday, whatever it is, we are going to do that to take care of them.
Yeah, we're committed to our clients.
It's more about the relationship. It's like I said, if I break even on a job, it is what it is. Are they taken care of? And then, the success will come as a consequence of doing a good job and having integrity and having quality.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference people see is, they're not just a number. They're not just the next certification. I want to build a relationship with them. I want to know what they want, and I want to try and make that possible for them.
Yep.
I really mean that when I say that, right? When one of my clients calls me and has a problem, I'm going to do whatever I have to fix it.
Yep. And would you say that we do that across all of our service lines?
100%.
Yeah. So it naturally translated into this service line.
We handle things the same way on test and balance. We handle the same things in commissioning. It's that culture. Like that's what we're expected to do at EAB.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So Jared, when we start talking about the difference with CEC
Mm-hmm.
CEC services, right? Obviously, we've had very good luck with our existing clients, but we've also been able to gain some new clients who really see that difference and embrace that difference,
Sure.
right? And especially with our pharmacy clients, what are some of the things you've seen specifically related to compounding pharmacies
Mm-hmm.
where we were different, right? We went in and we really opened the facility, either the facility manager or the pharmacy manager's eyes to what they should be doing,
Right.
and why EAB is different.
A lot of times when I go into something like a sterile compounding pharmacy, I'll have to prep the customer. I'll have to let them know, like, however long this was taking before, expect it to take longer, and we may find problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do things by the book. We're not going to take shortcuts. We're going to do exactly what has to be
And
done.
specifically in those pharmacies, we're really talking about USP
standards,
Yep.
right? So there are specific things for every single certification that have to happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I found was I was going into these facilities, and a lot of the pharmacists were telling me, how come you blocked out 6 to 8 hours to do our pharmacy certification? I said, well, that's how long it takes to do it. A biosafety cabinet, just by itself, if you're doing it the right way, should probably take 45 minutes to an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just for that one piece of equipment in there. And I can't tell you how many times they've told me, well, whoever was doing it before, I'm not going to go there,
Sure.
was...
but just generally, because we've heard this from
generally,
multiple clients.
Not just in Houston. This is, San Antonio, Dallas, everywhere that we've served is, our other certifier was taking, 2 hours.
to do a pharmacy.
Hour and a half,
Yeah.
3 hours to do an entire pharmacy certification. And, they may have been doing it for decades, right? They may have ways that they can be very efficient at things, right? I'm not saying that we won't continue to be quicker at doing it ourselves as we become more and more experienced in the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between 2 hours and 6 to 8 hours,
that's a big difference.
That's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I've seen. And the thing is I'm trying to communicate to the clients and make sure that they know what they should be expecting. Because if they don't continue to use me as a certifier, great. They can use somebody else.
But they still need to
know
the level of quality that they deserve.
They still need to know what should be happening,
Yep.
right? So I've had pharmacies where I've gone and they've had a pharmacy student or something like that. And I've said, hey, let them watch our full certification. And I've taken them through the entire process. And at the end, I've asked them, now you tell me if I could have done everything that I just did in 2 hours. And of course the answer is no.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not like you're standing around twiddling your thumbs. You guys
we are working the entire time.
The whole time, right?
A lot of times not even taking a lunch.
Yeah.
Not taking a break. Solid 6 to 8 hours of doing that certification.
Yep.
Right? And when I tell them that, they're like, yeah, obviously, of course, you could not do everything that I just watched you do in 2 hours.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring this back full circle now. That really brings us back to that thought leadership and practical experience, because now we're trying to communicate that back to the industry, right?
Right.
We've kind of identified a need in the industry. We've built on our practical experience in testing and balancing, and we're communicating that back. We're not just using it for ourselves. We're trying to get the word out to owners and pharmacy managers and things like that of what these certifications really should be to help protect them from a compliance standpoint,
right,
and a quality standpoint. Because really, when it comes down to all of these critical environment spaces, you're talking about sterile areas. And if the systems don't work, it can compromise product in their mind, right?
It comes down to integrity,
Yep.
right? The certifier is the one who's saying it's good,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's nobody coming after that point, right? So the clients have to take certifications at their word,
Yep.
right? And just assume that it has been done right. So, I mean, it has to be the integrity of the person doing the certification.
Yep.
It really does. So.
Yep. That's great. That's great, Jared. Well, thank you so much.
Yep.
It's all been really good. Look forward to doing it again in the future.
Okay.